Welcome to the Swipe Right Effect podcast, where we will be sharing with you the power to get unstuck by swiping right on yourself. Your host, author C.K. Collins, a.k.a. Kelly, gets personal with her guests, sharing stories of themselves getting unstuck with wisdom and guidance. Where do you feel stuck? Are you waiting to get your new life started after a big change? You've come to the right place. So with that said, let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Swipe Right Effect. I'm C.K. Collins, a.k.a. Kelly. And today we are going to talk to Miranda Marriott all the way from Oz, from Melbourne, Australia.
That's
and
right.
Welcome, Miranda.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
You're welcome. I just want to tell everybody a little bit about you and then we'll jump in with the questions.
Okay.
Miranda, since she was 16, knew she wanted to be a coach. I think that's so cool. She studied psychology. She worked in human resources, leadership development. She did 5 years on a teaching gig before she ended up a coach when she was about to have her baby boy. Miranda had a trifecta of change, just like me, and I can't wait to dig into that. But in 2016, and here we are. She's been coaching for 7 years. She's coached women's self-worth, and now she really focuses on abundance. So again, welcome, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And it's crazy, isn't it, connecting in this way, and you're over in the other side of the world and I'm here, and it's awesome.
And yet we have so much in common.
Yes.
That's something to learn from. I said trifecta of change because when I tell my story, that's how I describe it. And when we were talking before we started, you told me. So in 2017, I had my youngest child graduate from college, and so was finally an empty nester. My 30-year marriage ended and I got divorced, and I had to sell my business. In 2016, you were having a baby, you were getting a divorce, and you were building a business.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of on the other ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. How amazing is that?
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
So how did that, tell me your mindset when you were going through all of that and starting a new business? That must have been incredibly stressful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you'll know this as well, like any one of those things by themselves is enough to break a lot of people, like having a new baby can be a real challenge,
right.
Starting a new business, breaking up with a partner of many years, like it can all individually be enough to break you down, but then all at once, it's another story as well. So at the beginning, I was really, really challenged, and it really just sideswiped me. I didn't really see it coming, it was such a shock for me, even though when I look back now, that was so obvious and there were so many signs, but at the time I had no clue, it sort of happened all within a month. And so I think for me, the worst thing was just the shattering of my dreams. I had all these visions, these dreams. My worldview was a set way, and it just like all shattered, and I think it was just that grief and that feeling of not knowing. I just didn't feel any grounding. I just felt like I was falling. There was nothing to attach to. That was the biggest thing I could say of how I felt at the time. And that was the key reason as to why I actually one of the reasons is my son. Obviously, I had to be well enough for him to get up and actually get coaching, get counseling, get help, apply the psychology that I'd learned so that I could be the mother who was whole and not this zombie that I was walking around just in a shell of a body, So that was one reason. But the other reason, I was like, I don't want another dream to shatter. I don't want another vision to shatter. I've wanted to do this business since I was 16. This was the year I was going to do it. Like, I'm not letting another thing be broken from this, So I propelled into, my business when my son was 6 weeks old, and I actually was feeling a lot better and well. And it was a blessing and a curse in that the blessing was that it gave me something else, my son, and that to focus on. So it was such a bright light of hope, and such a beautiful vision. But I also had no idea what I was doing. Everything I tried seemed to, like, a lot of things weren't working. So like it was that curse of like wanting to birth this so much. And there's actually a quote that I can't exactly remember exactly how it's said, but it basically says, like, if you birth what is within you, it will bring beauty and life, but if you do not, it will destroy you. And it was that feeling of like, I want to get this off the ground because it wasn't, and it wasn't as quickly as I wanted, and it wasn't going as well as I wanted. It was like really also tearing me apart at the same time. So it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah. So let's talk about resilience. That seems appropriate.
Yeah. It does.
So I think I talk a lot about with my clients about letting things go, that give yourself permission to quit something so that you can start your comeback. If you don't quit that toxic relationship, if you don't quit that job that's eating you alive, if you don't quit some kind of unhealthy behavior in yourself, it's not always external. If you don't quit that, you can't start your comeback. And so, let's tell us about resilience and
how I started my comeback. I totally agree with what you're saying there around the quitting element, because that was a part of like trying to hold on to the dream and reinvigorate it and realign it with my ex and things. And it's like, it wasn't aligned, and it was meant to not, my soul's path was this way and it wasn't meant to be. And I had to move on and let that go and rebuild another vision, recreate another vision, instead of trying to hold on to that and reconnect that was gone, So I think that was such a important understanding. And I think a reason why so many people have issues with that is because there's that sort of how much you've invested in the business or the job or the person or the house, and it's all this sunk cost that you're like, oh, but then I'm gonna like never get that back. And it's like, it's better to cut it off when it's like dead and dying, and that, because it's just going to drain more out of you. So I think that is such a key piece. But another one for me was putting that energy and desire and focus in the vision, because so much of my time when I was in pain was focusing on the past and what I didn't have and what I'd lost and what was difficult. And so when I was either in the present moment very fully by doing meditation, or I started a really deep meditation practice and just like being really present with the feeling of the moment. So whether I was being really deeply present, or I was in the future, envisioning excitement, like giving myself hope, like those were two key pieces. And something that I was a song that was playing, and this was probably like so vital to help me like get out of that pit. Because at one point, I don't know if you felt this, I felt like I was in a pit and I just kept trying to like drag myself out. It was such a deep one, but it was so muddy and mucky, and I just would go up and fall back down. It was just that feeling. So I didn't feel I was progressing sometimes, but there was a song that said, the wave that was meant to crush you will be the wave that will lift you high. And I just like would repeat that as like a mantra all the time, like every time I felt that, and saying like, in some point in the future, this will help me rise, and this will be a pivotal piece to why I evolve, and is so important to hold on to that hope when you're in such a powerless, hopeless place, And Viktor Frankl talks about that in The Man's Search for Meaning. I'm not sure if you've ever read that book. He's the psychiatrist from the concentration camps. And he looked at the survival rate and why people survived and why they didn't from an internal perspective. And one of the things was hope, and having the vision of the future that he would propel to and hold on to, because he would see himself on stage speaking about his journey and like teaching people about the lesson. And that was a key reason. And the people's death rate would increase when they'd lost hope around Christmas and New Year, when they thought they were going to be free. So hope and hopelessness is actually like either keeps us alive and thriving or kills us,
Yeah. So hope is the key to resilience.
It's a massive
what's going to help you make your comeback.
Or
just survive. Sometimes it's just about surviving, and later comes the comeback.
I think hope is really vital, really, really vital. And just putting more effort and time into your self-care. Like I just had to put so much more dedication into me, the way I was feeling. I had such a inner dialogue going on of an inner critic, and so I had to really give it the medicine of the inner compassion. And luckily, I discovered some compassion work and looked at how I could speak to myself like I'd speak to my son, because my son was this beautiful baby. I was giving him so much love and nurture. Like there was just such unconditional love connected. But I was treating myself so horribly, like blaming myself for everything. And I was like, I just started to to see myself as my son and I go, okay, what if he was going through this? What would I say? And I just talk to myself like that. Even though I didn't feel it for myself, I channeled that love into myself through him.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it just started to come to me. And in 6 months of that, of hope and meditation and presence and then compassion, like it completely transformed my life in every way.
Yeah, I think that those the pain from the past, the limiting beliefs that we place on ourselves that come from past pain or past trauma. Catherine Woodward Thomas has a book called Calling in the One. And some of the exercises, she actually has you, write a letter to your 5-year-old self. Or she has you go into meditation. She guides you through meditation. And she says, okay, tell your 5-year-old self how you're feeling now, and that it was okay for this, or it was okay for that. So I do think, like, whether you're imagining yourself as a child or meditating in that way, I think that's really powerful. I love that you thought to treat yourself like you treated your baby, to love yourself like you loved your baby. Because to women, that nothing could be more powerful than that, because that love for your child is always really the most overwhelming relationship you have in your life, in a beautiful way. Sometimes in a tragic way, but really, hopefully for everyone, a beautiful way. And so if you could treat yourself like that, that would be incredible. I love that.
And I was just like, why not? Why does he deserve this worth and value and I don't, and just little ways. I was breastfeeding him and spending hours and hours a day doing that. And then I wasn't even cooking myself a proper meal. And it's like, why am I doing that? And just spending so much, because ultimately my milk and what gets to him is impacted if I'm not feeling myself well, so he gets affected if I'm not looking after me. So, let's do that.
Yeah. Circle of life, circle of food and nutrition in that instance. So, let's talk about, you said, we were talking about how intuition is a tricky thing when you've been through something tough, like a divorce, when you've been through something traumatic, maybe even back from your childhood. But there's this seems to be this phenomenon, and I guess it's probably all gone on. Maybe we just all talk about it more now, or we put a name to it: gaslighting. So when you're being gaslit, that can happen at work. Somebody telling you that something's your fault when it's not. It can happen in a marriage, when someone's having an affair, but they're telling you it's your fault. It can even happen in friendships. So when you finally take that step and you quit that relationship or you quit that job, it's really hard to start trusting your intuition again. And so tell us how you think about intuition and how you work with it.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably one of my favorite topics. I love intuition. It's the gift that has just created so much in my life. But at the beginning with my ex, I was someone who doubted my intuition, because I was like, well, why did I choose them? And why was did I not see and know? And but as I was saying to you before, when I looked back through real open eyes, it was like my intuition 3 weeks into the relationship was saying, when I first started dating him, was like, no, this is not on. But I just wanted to hold on. And there's an interesting, in the Veda's wisdom, an interesting idea of the eternity symbol, that figure of 8, of creation, maintenance, and destruction. And the longer that we hold a maintenance mode on something when it's meant to destroy, we destroy it either by changing the way we're relating to it, or we actually just end and quit the relationship or the business or whatever it is, like you said. The longer we hold on when our intuition is telling us to stop and go, the more destruction it will create in our path. So for me, for like 9 years, I was holding on with multiple messages from my intuition over and over and over again. I could tell you hundreds of times, I was told to leave and to not, and to, and the longer I held, the more destructive the path got, because I got so far off my aligned track that it had to destroy so much to get me back on. So I started to really start trusting my intuition from noticing that and seeing that and seeing the pathway and how it was protecting me and guiding me, but I just wasn't listening. But then in little ways, and I didn't know how to access my intuition. I think as kids, we're so intuitive and we're so connected to our imagination, and then we lose touch. We're told to learn this way and copy this, and so we can disconnect. So I didn't know how to really get into my intuition. But I remember early in my business that these little nudges I'd receive, with people or with business or whatever, and I just follow it, and it would lead to gold whenever I did, and when I didn't, it would just destroy things as well. So for an example, I was told to go to this networking event very early in my business. I just got a nudge to do it. And I didn't know why. I just was like, I have to go here. And I went, and it was like towards the end of the event and nothing had happened. No one, I hadn't met anyone. And I was like, why am I here? I went to the bathroom and I was like, to God and my intuition, like, why am I here? You told me to come here, and, got out of the bathroom. And literally when I got out, like there was this guy around, and he was a part of this radio station in Melbourne. And he just met me and he's like, oh, I've got this event coming, like come over. And I was like, okay, I did it thinking maybe that's the thing, and I went and I met a girl there, and she brought a whole year of business in for me. She had all these clients who referred, and so my whole year, actually like heaps of clients, I made a whole year's worth of income from one meeting with her, right?
Wow.
If I didn't listen to my intuition, and I didn't know, I just got these nudges and felt just I had to do it. I didn't know why, but that's what happened. Then I also around the same time of that business was working with a coach who was a strategy coach, and my intuition was telling me to be a self-worth coach, to be a resilience coach, like to work in that space with the life I just had and what I'd overcome. Mm-hmm. She said, no one will pay you money for that from a strategy point of view. So you got to be a health coach, because the only thing you've got, you don't have a husband, you don't have a kid that's older, you don't have this. The only thing you have is your health, and you overcame weight loss. So, you got to talk about that. And I was like, I cared about my weight when I was 20. Like, I don't care about that anymore. Like, it's not exciting to me. Like, she's like, no. And so we fought about it for months, and she's like, no, you got to do it. That's the only way. So I went against my intuition and I did what she told me, and my business just died, because I wasn't connected to it. My intuition wasn't telling me to do it. For months I tried it, and it wasn't working. I tried everything she said. I went back to my intuition, did resilience stuff, which in the strategy world was like, you don't have a niche. It's not where to work. Blah, blah. Made way more money at the moment that I did that and went back to what my intuition said. And I've got so many stories like that throughout my business, and that was when I didn't know how to even access intuition. Like now, 4 years ago, so halfway through my business, I uncovered the work of the superconscious, which is a deep connection to your intuition, but there's an actual like structure to connect to your intuition so that you can call upon it whenever you want, whenever you need. And it's like this genius insight all the time that you've got constant access to, instead of it just coming in the wind when you like, a nudge that just comes. And so that, for me, when I uncovered that and that portal that's just constantly open, we just don't know how to access, that is when my whole life, my whole business, everything changed. Like when I told you there was a before and after point for me, like that was the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing as like the zone of genius? I hear that term all the time now, and it's recent for me.
Yeah.
That I keep hearing it, but
it's a little different. Like, I mean, your superconscious is your intuition. It is your genius. It is your higher self. We've got a superconscious that is that, and it's like our superpower that is actually our innate truth of who we are. And as babies and kids, like we're innately connected to that. But then we just start to form an unconscious and an identity, and we start to believe all this stuff about ourselves, because when we come to earth and, become a baby and like we have to figure out how the world is, we've got to orientate, because imagine if we had no rudder and no navigational system of how to orientate and navigate through life. Like the unconscious is trying to figure all that out to survive and to be safe. And so we start forming these ingrained beliefs about who we are, who other people are, who the world is. That becomes our unconscious.
Right.
But it's very limited. It's very stuck. It's 20 different belief sets versus the billion of opportunities of what is possible, So we've got the unconscious, we've got the superconscious, and then we've got our conscious mind that is just our human operating adult thinking brain, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so the superconscious work is really about knowing how to work with your unconscious, because your beliefs are there and they're not going anywhere. You can't get rid of a belief. If I get bitten by a scorpion or stung by a scorpion when I'm 4, my brain and my unconscious is never going to let me let go the belief that scorpions are dangerous and can kill you, you know, like, because it needs to be safe. Like, it's not going to let it go. So we don't need to try and change it and let it go. And, you know, we just have to be aware of all of that and then just pivot back to our superconscious perspective, get the download and the intuitive from that and move with that. And when I started to uncover that and how to focus more on my power and less on the past, and that was when everything shifted for me. So the superconscious is a lot like more than the zone of genius, I would say.
When one of your clients is having trouble, or they don't believe they can follow their intuition, they don't believe that they can make the right choices for themselves, do you have a specific path that you put them down or piece of advice that you give them?
I feel like the main one would be like, I teach them how to use the structure of the superconscious to connect. And one of the ways is, you know, to step into the innocence and the unknown and not to try and know how to make it work. Because the known is the unconscious, you know, where it's trying to fix and know. And so the superconscious is often in the unknown. So dropping all that, you know, and just stepping into this open, curious sort of perspective, you know, is one key. And I teach them that structure of how to work on their imagination, how to work on their intuition, how to work on the vision, so that they receive that intuitive download. And then I just say, follow that, you know, and they may follow that by giving. So they might be reading, intuitively connecting to another person as my client. And they might be giving them information and insight of what they're getting. And the awesome thing is I could do it with you. And like, I don't know you in any deep way, but I could tell you all this stuff. Right. And so they get belief from, oh my goodness, like this person's telling me like that's all true and that's accurate. And I'm just telling them all this stuff and I don't know anything, you know, like, so they get amazed by that. And then, and I still get amazed, you know, and I've done this work for years. Like, and then I say, okay, go act on, you know, same with me, right? With rebuilding that intuitive connection and belief. I go to that event that I'm followed. I take that nudge and it leads to this magic. Oh shit, okay, this works, you know, and I keep writing down the evidence of, and so that's how I would get them to do it, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Be open and curious. I love that. That's really cool. So some of the things that I work on in my new workshop called Momentum is wealth mindset. And yes, we talk about wealth as in monetary abundance, but we also talk about the wealth of your wisdom that you've acquired, and the heartfelt emotions that you gather through all the different relationships in your life, and the maturity to deal with relationships in your life. So I know you like to talk about abundance. That's kind of your baby. So I know with wealth mindset, abundance, like how does someone get into, you know, a wealth mindset that is of abundance?
Beautiful. I love that question. It definitely doesn't have to do with your external reality. A lot of people think that, you know, how can I feel abundant? And I'm not abundant, you know, I don't have money. Like, it has to come from within first. It's all a mirror. So that time right before that turning point for me, when I uncovered the superconscious work, I got into $20,000 of debt in my bank account. Like, I had to borrow $20,000 from someone, like not the house loan and other things I had. Like, I could tell you how much debt I also had, but in just living, I got into minus $20,000. And because I was paying all this money to coaches and again, gave away my power, stopped listening to my intuition, followed these coaches were telling me that was off from what I was feeling. And I had 0 sales for 4 months because of that. Wow. It was the worst my business had ever been. So I was in a place of the worst scarcity I'd ever had in my whole life. And I was actually looking if it happened another month or two, I would have had to move out of the house I was living in, and I had nowhere to live. Like, who could have been homeless. And I was going to become that stat of a mother, single mom living on the poverty line, with my son. And that was the biggest fear I had, and I felt so guilty to put myself and him in that position. And so my reality and my external reality was not good, and I was not abundant in the realm of what you'd look on the outside, But I uncovered 3 key things that shifted to the point that then I had a $20,000 a month the next month and never went backwards ever again out of 33 years of struggling, right? And this was the 3 things. One was that my abundance was internal, and it had to be created from inside first and then out, So every time I'd start looking at my bank account, seeing a bill, going freaking out, I would just feel that, release that, become aware of that, like I said, about the unconscious and the fear. And then I would go back to, what do I desire? What do I want? What do I see? What's my vision? And I'd see my clients being full. I'd see it, all this stuff happening, and then I'd get triggered again and get upset. And I'd literally just go, all right, and then pivoted. And I just constantly did that. And at the beginning, I had to do it all the time. And eventually I started to feel more abundant, more naturally, because I was seeing the house I had of complete stuff, the food fridge full, I knew what could happen if I did get into a bad space. My family would somehow work it, we'd work it out, all this thing would happen. So number 1 is abundance is created inside, not outside. That was the first thing I learned. Second thing I learned was I had to be mission-based and service-based and value-based, not money-based. So my business up until that point, when I was on the sales calls, I was caring about this person because I saw them unconsciously as a dollar bill and whether they were going to give me the money to get me out of this shithole or not, And they would sense that unconsciously,
Right.
So I actually started to go, I want to, what's the end result of them working with me? What do they get out of this? How are they going to be transformed? And I started putting more focus and emphasis on that and putting so much effort into transforming them and going above and beyond to support them. And it just became a mission focus instead of an adding value, because if I add value and I take care of people, I'm going to be taken care of and I'm going to get value back, So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was coming back to backing myself and my power, that sense of self-certainty, and coming back to my intuition, because I was becoming really doubtful and uncertain because I was giving my power away and following what these people were telling me. Again, I went back because this person was telling me I had to do strategy coaching and I couldn't talk about psychology and energy. People wouldn't pay for that. But I had studied psychology and emotion and energy my whole life. That was what I cared about. I don't care about strategy. I'm not a strategy social media coach. That's not my, look, I can talk to people about it, but that's not my genius. Like that you said, the genius zone, it's not mine. It's not what I love, not what excites me. So I started to go back to what I cared about and teaching the stuff I cared about against what they told me, because that's what I felt intuitively. Those 3 things in that 1 month of me doing that, I had a $20,000 month, and then I had, just did not go below $10,000-$20,000 ever again. I went up to 30, 40, 100, 200. It just kept building there was more things I learned after that, but beginning was from that,
Right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that's back in your power, following your intuition, all of that was the last step. That's amazing. So as you're looking at what you do have and abundance, and then you said your abundance is internal, and then mission, service driven, transformation driven. At one point you said something like you had to focus on what you did have. And then, so you've got gratitude going there. I do know that I have this option and I do have that. But and I do think gratitude is a really important step towards abundance, is being grateful for what you do have and knowing you do have abundance. And you had that mindset. So at what point, and maybe this was early on since you studied psychology, but did manifestation become part of helping you elevate your life?
Yeah, it was actually around the same sort of time, not long before. So for the 3 years of my business up until that point, I was trying strategy after strategy coach after the, every external thing, every action I could do, I had to learn another way to do it, a better way. And to me now, like strategy is like, an action is 10% and then 90% is your inner world and your energy and your emotion, the manifesting side of things. Like, if you do not look after that and then you take all this action, which is what I was doing, you're just shooting in the dark and you're not aligned to anything. And so how are you going to hit your target? And so I had so many, and I could tell you that many stories of times where, again, the universe is trying to be like, Miranda, your energy matters, emotion matters, like yours, and I just kept going back to the strategy, until like a third year, I was like, got the message, like, oh, okay, hang on, like maybe this is how it works.
That's not working for me.
Yeah. So one example early on, that first year of my business, I had a deep belief in God, and I believed that God would give me the amount of money I used to get in my job every month somehow, and because I was like, I'm a single mom, God's not going to let me go, like that's just a belief I had, right? And every single month in that year, I did receive exactly to the dollar the amount I used to get in my job from some form. Maybe not always my business, could have been a gift, could have been government support, whatever. Every month I got it, right? I went away and moved down to the beach at the end of that year, moved away from my family. For some reason, I felt like also God went away. Like, I don't know. I just like believe that, I'm alone and it's not going to happen. That month I made nothing. Blow by blow, I can tell you every time internally I felt aligned, beautiful, like, and in higher frequency and full of certainty. And I would create magic and abundance. But then every time I started doubting things and getting insecure and like, bang, would just close up shop. Nothing would happen. So that was all happening. But it was probably a month or two before. Oh, I know it might have been around the same time as when I just shared. I can't remember the timeline of everything. No, it was a few months before that shift I had. I'd started to believe that energy was working, right? And that manifesting was the way. And so, because a person I knew had created this crazy big business, like very quickly, just from using manifesting. And I was like, oh, I've done 3 years and, I hadn't got that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And so I was like, stuff strategy. I went to 1 month of meditating and just being like, I'm going to focus on a 10K month and meditate on this. And I did not do any other action in my business other than that the whole month. Because I'd had lifetimes of trying and it went, so I was like, nah, let's just cut it out and do this. The last call on the last day of that month, I got the exact click over to $10,000, in that. And that was the first time I'd ever had $10,000 month. Now, I don't say don't do any action, don't strategy, now I just had to experiment, right? But that's when I started to realize that manifesting and my inner work is way more important.
Do you actively do visioning exercises or a vision board or anything like that at once a year or 3 times a year?
I actively do visioning every day. Visioning is a massive part of my superconscious work that I do, but it's not a vision board as such, because a vision board to me is very static and it's very, stagnant. It's just this like, 2D type image, right? To me, I envision like a movie in my head and it plays a new thing every time and it's exciting and it's thrilling and it's got music and it's like, so I use visioning a lot. It's probably one of the main manifesting tools I use, but it's in my visualization inside of me, not, and if someone finds that helps and they see images or something else, like that's cool. I'd probably prefer to, like, I love following Instagram women that I really admire and like see their stories in their life. And like that gives me visuals of like, oh yeah, that's what I want. And, so I'd probably do that more than a vision boarding as well. If I want any other, just because it's the more alive it can be, the more exciting it can be, the more full technicolor it can be with all of your senses, the more powerful it is to your superconscious to go, okay, yes, this is what we want. If it gets a bit boring or bland, or saying that, I used to do vision boards before I knew much on the superconscious. And, I do have my car downstairs that was on my vision, and I've got a bunch of things that was on there, so it does work. It's just more powerful if you add aliveness to it.
Yeah. I think I was speaking with someone yesterday and she was saying, you have to be careful when you're visioning or doing a vision board that you're not really doing You're not setting goals, as opposed to a vision that is something like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. That's a goal. That's not a vision. A vision is something that you can't figure out how you're going to do it yet. But this is what I'm going to do. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I like to see there's 3 realms of playing in manifesting. There's the predictable, which is like the goal of like, yeah, I'm going to lose the 10 pound, whatever. There's the possible, which is like a little bit more exciting and, a little bit further, playing the world of possibility. And then there's the potentiality, which is like way out there, crazy ideas, like that could happen in 10 million years, and if we play in all the realms, they all are important, right? Like, and so, yeah, when I envision things, like I'm playing in all those realms, and they all can be created. So that's what I do. But one thing I will say that's really, really vital in manifesting and envisioning is that it's not a negative vision. What a negative vision is it's a running away from something versus what you actually want. Because if you run away from something, so for instance, when I got into that big debt time, I was saying I'm wealthy and I was doing all the affirmations at the time and all that, but it was coming from a place of, I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to, I don't want to have all these problems with money. I don't want to have no clients. Like it was all coming from all these fears I had. I don't want to be homeless with my son and a poverty-stricken single mom. Like all of it, all the vision I was having or what I was trying to, was all coming from that fear. And so it created the very thing I was afraid of because the energy was in the fear. So what happened when I started to shift it is I started to go, let's just imagine I'm in a blank slate. Let's imagine there's nothing wrong. There's no problem. I'm whole and I'm just living, like let's just delete all that in my perspective, right? Let's just put the blinkers on that and pretend that's not even there for this exercise. And let's go to what would I want? What would I love if everything was taken care of and I'm all good? What would I just love for love's sake? What would I love for joy? What would I love just for its own thing? And I went to envision that. And that's very powerful because it's pure love instead of fear, know.
There's your potentiality.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that. Yeah. And I don't love that we're out of time, but we're running out of time.
No.
I told you it would go fast. Yeah. So tell the listeners or the watchers how they can find you and maybe what they might find on your website.
Yeah. So mirandamarriott.com is my website, and they can find a free abundance meditation, which was the very one that I used to hit that 10K month. And it's actually the one I use every day still now, 4 years on, to create 100K months, 200K months, like to have the crazy launches that I have very magically. So I offer that for free on my website. And also there's a training in there as well that is a very concise piece of work that helps you actually really implement and apply these key pieces I've talked about. So yeah, there's a free training on there as well. And on Instagram, I'm coach.miranda.marriott. And you can follow. I always offer lots of content on there and trainings and teachings. And so yeah, they're probably 2 key ways to do that.
Awesome. And Marriott spelled just like the hotel?
Like the hotel, double R, double T. That's it.
Great. Well, last question. I asked everybody in my book this question. I ask all of my guests this question. So, Miranda, what feeds your soul?
Feeds my soul. One thing that comes up when you share that is magic. Magic and creating magic and witnessing magic of just miracles and manifesting. When I ever manifest, and it could be the tiniest thing, like a feather falling that's incredible, days and days in a row, like the most beautiful feathers falling right in my face, like like it could be that, or it could be something huge that I've manifested. But just doing it through a miracle and magically and with like in just this crazy powerful way, doing it within myself or seeing my clients or other people do that I've taught, like to me, that just lights me up and feeds my soul so deeply. And another thing I would say is the magic and adventure of travel and retreats and pilgrimages. just started launching a program called The Pilgrimage, and it's a year-long mastermind, and it's involving 3 retreats. And like for me, learning in the land how to manifest, how to magic, and teach, learning in that environment and being surrounded by such a beautiful, adventurous experience. Like, yeah, there'd be 2 key things that light up my soul.
Wow. I love that you call it pilgrimage, because I went on a pilgrimage in Spain. So
yeah, well, that's what, when you said that, I was like, well, that's one I'm going to be doing. I've got a bunch of them. Every year we're going to go to a new place, and I personally do my own pilgrimages a lot. And so, yeah, that's on my list of one that I'm going to do for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miranda. This was fun. I took copious notes. I am going to go check out all those resources, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and your wealth and abundance with our listeners. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me and asking such beautiful questions. It really helped, me share things that I wasn't thinking I was going to share. So I love that.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Kelly's book is available on Amazon and through your local bookstores. Look for The Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. Kelly's interviews with 10 friends from around the world unlock powerful truths to getting your new life started.